This is Eric Reifer, and I'm John Kilpatrick. We have Okolona Aikido in Louisville, Kentucky, USA. And we, as you've seen from our videos, what we've been working with lately is what we're calling leading, which is what we think Sensei did a lot. We think it's the heart of Aikido, and most people don't do it at all. I don't know of anybody in Aikido that does this in any systematic way. And so I want to, and I've mentioned this a little bit in some of the other videos, but I want to really discuss it, and that is how we got into leading and why we think it's important in Aikido. And there were two problems that bothered us that got us into this. And the first problem is Arimi. And the way Arimi is done with swords in Aikido is that he raises to cut short, and I just step in and stab him. That's me stepping in and pivoting to the side and stabbing him is Arimi, as it's presented in Aikido. And that sounds fine except for one little detail, and that is, if it was that easy to just step in and stab somebody when they raise their sword, you could never raise your sword. So you wouldn't have Japanese sword fighting at all. I mean, you know, it wouldn't take people long to figure out that whenever you raise your sword, they just stab you, and that's the end of the game. So that really bothered us, and so we were trying to find out, well, what's the counter to this? Well, the counter that you see is Saito and a couple of other people do this. Most people never do this counter. And what Saito does, let's do this, so that you'll see what it is that he raises his sword to cut me down, and I ring him, and he pivots. So, and he just pivots out of the way. Well, we're thinking, how can that, our experience is, now we train really hard, we train as realistically as we can. So when, if I go, you know, in Aikido, if somebody punches at you or something, you just pivot out of the way. I could never make that work. Or let me put it a different way. Nobody could ever make that work against me. Maybe occasionally they would if I wasn't paying attention. But they couldn't systematically make that work. So if I punch at Eric and he goes a step out of the way, I mean, it's easy to follow him and hit him. It's an absolute no-brainer. And I've always been, maybe it's because I studied karate or something, but really, I'm a lousy athlete. I've got very little athletic ability, and yet even high-ranking Aikido people, I can hit them. And so then when I started my own club here, and we would practice, we could never make it work where you could just pivot out of the way. And so when we see Saito doing that, we're going, ha ha ha, this won't work. Well, we tried it and it did work. And so something about what Saito's doing when he's stepping to the side and raising his sword, something about that works. He's able to pull it off. And so we started putting in a lot of study time on that, trying to figure out why that was working when what you normally do in Aikido won't work. And you know, we were having some success with it, but the thing that bothered us is, you know, he goes to stab me, and I do this. Well, you you know, I don't have anything, there's no protection there. You know, if I'm parrying, I can understand that. There's something there to keep him from stabbing me. But when I just raise my hands and step out of the way, this is pretty scary. And a friend of mine gave me a copy of a book called No Contact Systema, and I'll put a link to it in the discussion, in the text. And this book explained that when a person goes to grab something or goes to punch something, that you have a primitive reflex that takes over. And that person loses conscious control until that reflex runs its course. So what you try, when you start attacking somebody, you go after movement. So if I have my hands up here between us and he goes to stab, he'll follow my hands. He won't follow me because that's leading him. And in Aikido, that is called leading. When I was saying, when you do that, now usually they're doing something simpler than that in Aikido that they're calling leading, but when a sensei does this, which he does a lot, we call it leading. And so once I knew that this was a reflex, and if you can get the person, if you can take control of that reflex, they can't do anything about it. Then I felt a lot better about this, and we started really thinking about this like a bullfighter. And a bullfighter puts his cape up, and the bull charges, and he steps out of the way and lets the bull follow the cape. And this has worked extremely well for us. And we don't have many examples. We have a lot of examples of this with weapons. You see O-sensei do this a lot with weapons. We don't have many examples, say, with knives. I have very, very little footage that I've seen, and I got from Stanley Prennan with Aikido Today. We got all his videos on O-sensei, and there's not very much footage of him defending against knife attacks. And when he's defending against empty hand stuff, he's doing other kinds of things usually. And so there's not much footage of this, and so we're having to figure it out. But this is how we got into looking at the leading. And we've learned a whole lot about it. And we've gotten where we're fairly good at trapping the person's attention and leading him past us. And so not only does it work well defensively in terms of weapons, now in studying O-sensei, what we had to do, Eric was, when we were talking about this, Eric said, you got to tell him this. So I remember it. I said, if I don't tell him, you stop me. But what we did is, what's the program we use?
VLC
Media
Player.
VLC Media Player, which lets us slow down these videos of O-sensei, and we study them in slow-mo. And by studying them in slow motion, we can see what O-sensei is doing. At normal speed, you can't tell what he's doing. And he would always make things as subtle as he could, so it's real hard to see what he's doing. And so where it looks like when he's doing ski, where he's just punching at you, and people just reach out and grab it, so he punches and they just reach out and grab it. It looks like he's just reaching out and grabbing. But that's not really what he's doing. What he's doing is grabbing the guy's attention. He's not grabbing his hand. And so he attacks. Now I grab his hand after I have grabbed his attention. It's a subtle difference. Now I made that real blatant. And actually, when we practice it, I make it a lot more blatant than that for various reasons. But this is what you see. This is what you see seeing people doing. You're seeing they're grabbing the attention. So we practice that a lot to keep from getting stabbed or hit by our partners when they're attacking. In addition to that, this can be used in a lot of different ways. The Systema people, the no-contact Systema people, and I'll give you some links there, use this in a lot of ways. And Aikido's way of using it is a little different. And what we've discovered in playing with this, that besides leading somebody past you, you can use this leading to break their structure. And the Sistema people call what they do no contact Sistema, which is what the book is called. And they have gotten this to the point where they can do this leading and get you to fall down. Because they can break your structure to the point that you fall. And we're trying to learn how to do that so that you have no contact Aiki, where you're leading the people and getting them to spiral out of control. But anyway, this is how we got into this. And so if you're wanting to study this, and we hope you do, and if you do, we hope you get in touch with us and let us know what you're learning and finding out. But this is how we discovered it, and we do, if you look at O Sensei, I think you'll see that this is what he was doing.